Thank you. So thanks for inviting me here today. That was really interesting, actually, and really, resonates with me, having just conducted this big study that we have done, talking to women who are in midlife and menopause. And in fact, what we did, we followed women on their lives for about 4 months, talking about their lives, looking at how activity has impacted them, and then culminating in an exercise trial where we really got some interesting insights into what really are those barriers. So I'm going to share some of that with you today. I'm from Women in Sport. If you don't know, we're a charity where we look to give every woman and girl the opportunity to take part in sport and exercise, and we want to inspire her to do so. And we believe too many women and girls are missing out unnecessarily, and actually understanding what the needs are and being able to respond to those needs is a really important part of some of the work we do. So I'm going to focus on this specific life stage for women, so midlife and menopause. And I think, again, historically, it's been an area that perhaps in sport and exercise has been a little bit ignored and undercatered for, and yet it presents such a huge natural time of reappraisal for women when they're looking to improve health and well-being. It's a massive missed opportunity. So what I'd like to do first of all is just talk about the issue. What's the problem we're trying to solve? So again, one thing that struck us in the research that we did is the desire to get active is there. So 7 out of 10 women were telling us that they wanted to be more active at this stage. And in fact, when we talked to the least active women, there was an even higher propensity to want to really get involved in sport and activity. So I think, it raised for us a really important question of, what actually do we need to do? Why is this happening? Why is it that women are not taking part in sport and activity as much as they should be at this really critical life stage when it can do so much good and have so much value to their lives? So again, if you look at some of the Sport England figures from Active Lives, we can see 1/3 of women in that age group are just not getting that level of exercise that they need to get. And 1/5 of women are doing less than the 30 minutes a week. So, again, it's a really important time to get people active. We also talked to women in our own research who told us that since starting menopause, about 1/3 of them have started to drop out. And again, we know that keeping fit and active during midlife, as we've just heard, can have an immense benefit on health and happiness. And I think the interesting thing is it's not just immediately it can have that impact, but then when you look at what that does to later life, it can be huge. So if we just have a look, first of all, and start thinking about sport and exercise. Now, again, we've referenced the COM-B model, which I know Lisa and Kate were talking to earlier on, because if we think about this midlife stage, there is a huge challenge around getting women active who've not been doing sport and exercise, sometimes for quite some time. So what we observed was that for this particular midlife group, multiple barriers exist across all of these different areas of the COM-B model. And I think, again, it makes it much more difficult then to shift behaviour when you've got a number of different issues coming on. And I was really interested to see what Her Spirit have been doing, which I think is fantastic for this particular age group, to help them really take control, kickstart, and get over that first hurdle, which is probably the most difficult thing to do. So I think just talking to capability, first of all, I think one of the things we heard most of all was this: it's too late to do it. So again, there's this fitness at a really low ebb for some women, and getting started is the issue. But also there's these perceptions and mindset that they're actually starting to decline in terms of physical ability. If they haven't been active for a long time, it's just simply too late to invest in themselves and do something. So again, we need to really talk to that and support women. It's not just enough to signpost them to activities. They need to understand and be supported and reassured that actually they are capable of being able to do that. The other area in capability is we have to remember that some women decided that they weren't good at exercise and they weren't sporty way back as teenagers or in their early 20s. And again, that self-identification of who they are and what they're capable of has travelled with them through life. And, we heard many women talking to the fact that they weren't good at school means that they can't actually start again now. So some of those early experiences have had a really deep impact, which again talks to the importance of really working with women across the different life stages. And again, as I just said, natural fitness is declining perhaps as we're getting to sort of midlife, physical issues are creeping in, and then you've got the menopause symptoms, which sometimes can make exercise and fitness feel like a huge effort and a big inhibitor. If we think about the opportunity side of things, again, I think, it's not always clearly signposted. There appears to be a gap in provision that really does talk to women of this particular age. And this is what women were telling us. Again, younger people's sport and vigorous activities didn't feel quite right for them. And then at the other end of the spectrum, some of the more sort of slower activities, the chair activities, those for older people didn't feel right either. So that mid-age group feels a little bit about an age group that isn't so well catered for. And some women didn't want to just do sort of yoga or exercise, which is available to them. They wanted to be inspired, and they believed there was nothing out there for them. And I think that's important, because you have to remember that the fear of standing out, which I know Kate was talking to with This Girl Can, that fear of being ridiculed, that fear of failure is really high. So, if you think about it, it's amplified more within this particular group of women. And it's important that they can feel reassured. And then finally, motivation. Well, they want to do it, but they want to be inspired, and they need to be supported to kickstart it. And things that we were hearing are probably some of the things that we hear across the life stages for women, but again, amplified. That fear of judgment, the nervousness about doing it alone, the fact they don't see the relevance for them, and they're really struggling to get beyond this belief that they're capable of doing it. Everybody else's needs comes first, and they're not sure they're going to enjoy it. So again, I'd like to bring to life just some of the barriers that the women in our research talked about. When we got on to the exercise trial, it was really interesting, in fact, because the experience was transformative. So the women who did actually take part in exercise, and it will be evidenced in the film I'll show you later on, it exceeded expectations. And once they got beyond that first hurdle, having that support network to continue to do what they did has had a massive impact on their lives. So I'd like to just show a film of some of the barriers that the women in the research talked about.
I think the thing that's stopping me is me looking at all the fit young people in the pictures for the gym.
I feel a bit intimidated.
I feel a bit intimidated.
I've never been in exercise.
and I've always found it hard.
I've tried
gyms, I've tried everything, and I really don't like it.
They have exercise equipment.
They have exercise equipment in the parks.
Although they are a good idea.
Although they are a good idea to
I
have,
would feel like an
I would
idiot
feel like
using
an
them in a public
idiot
space.
using them in a public space.
It can be demotivating doing something you're not enjoying. So try another activity.
There's bound to be something you enjoy in the end.
I don't want to push myself.
I don't want to push myself at the moment because of all the people in the room. But my main reason is not wanting to walk in the room in the first place.
I need the incentive.
I need someone being there and encouraging me.
The first step is the hardest
one to take. Getting up and doing it. And where do I go? Because I can't do it on my own. I know I can't. Women on adverts doing sports are mainly young, go-getter types. I just don't see people of my age or weight, and I don't identify with them. I would identify with the over 40s women or women in their 50s who have lots of commitments.
I think we are an untapped market. If they actually offered something relevant to us, I'd say they'd be pushing at an open door.
Okay, so I think you could hear in the film some of the reasons that the women were giving for not participating in the sport and exercise. And I think it really brought to life to us the fact that there are these hurdles that need to be overcome. And then I think you need to think about some of the things that we've heard about menopause and what's actually happening in midlife. So again, you know, the problem is multi-layered. Let's think about these wider challenges at the life stage for women and what inhibits them from taking part in sport and exercise and really investing in their well-being and fitness. And again, I'm just sharing a word cloud that was generated about what are those health and well-being issues that they faced. And I think you can see right at the heart and centre is time, and that real pressure on time that creates a real difficulty for many women to actually invest time in themselves, and they feel guilty about taking that time out to invest in their own health and well-being. I think there's a number of things there that you can read which are all about the physical and emotional impacts of midlife and menopause, particularly the lack of sleep, exhaustion, and some of those symptoms that, again, probably don't make you feel like doing sport and exercise would be helpful. And again, then there's the taboo which menopause has, and we found that women were feeling isolated as a result of that taboo. So again, when it comes to physical exercise, women at this time of their lives are just not investing in themselves and not achieving the levels that they need. And then the pandemic has just added another layer to this. So just to have a look at some of the areas that we've talked about. Again, these are some of the quotes from the women at the top that you can see. And it's interesting when you have a look at the images portrayed around menopause and women in midlife, you know, it's a very negative image. It reinforces a stereotype. And again, it brings up images like you can see there on the screen, which paints a really poor picture and a very narrow picture of women in this life stage. I think, again, then, if you look at sport and exercise and some of the images that come up for sport and exercise, and again, you know, this is where this girl, Can, is doing a fantastic job of actually bringing real women and showing women that this is possible, and they're seeing women like them. So again, if you look at some of these pictures, it's not representing what they see in themselves, and that reinforces that belief that they're too late to actually take part in sport and exercise. So I think what we're saying is even just representing women in midlife in a more balanced and positive way could really support self-esteem and confidence. And again, we've worked with Getty Images to try and change some of these pictures we see of midlife women to much more positive pictures of women being active and taking control of their lives. So again, let's avoid reinforcing those stereotypes. I think the second area we saw was this massive impact on time in midlife, this whole sandwich generation, where, again, what we were hearing from the women was that taking time out for themselves and taking time out at all to invest in themselves, they felt really guilty about that, and they weren't able to forge that time. And again, that guilt is not positive, and that's something that we need to think about. How do we help women feel that they have got permission for that time and support them in the future? And I think what we've seen, again, we talked about COVID and that weight of responsibility on women. There's actually been an amplification of those gender roles. And again, we have heard from women that it's been even harder now to forge time for themselves than it ever was before, because they've had to take care of homeschooling, they've had to change their whole habits and exercise routines over that time period. And it's really hard for them to get back. So how do we support this permission for time? How can we help people feel that this is something worth investing in? And I think the third area that we saw within this life stage, and again, the conversation is getting out there. It's brilliant to see in this last few years that there have been conversations, but it's still seen as a bit of stigma and taboo. And, you know, it's interesting talking to women when they told us that actually they felt very uninformed about the symptoms of menopause, some of them not realizing that even they were going through menopause, and that some of these things they were experiencing could be helped by some interventions or exercise or just having more support around it. So this taboo and this lack of a conversation around menopause, and particularly we noticed with our women who were in the lower social economic classes, they felt very isolated and not supported. And again, I think getting the conversation out there is going to be an important backdrop almost to helping women get active. And I love this quote from Catherine, and we'll hear from Catherine later. But again, I think it's about not changing the symptoms of menopause and what's happening to her body. So she's saying, I can't change what's happening to my body, but I can change the way my body is so it can deal with those symptoms. And we heard a lot about all those different things that are going on in menopause, but it is this natural time of reappraisal. And I think, again, it's a time when women can feel a sense of loss, and actually to help women make positive choices, to feel empowered through sport and exercise, can have a massive impact on their health and future lives. And we found that talking to women, helping them feel in control, was hugely motivating and actually kick-started some of that sort of real intention to get active. And again, I think it's something that happens not just in a short period of time. So I think, again, women were telling us they thought menopause would happen in a few months, and they'd actually get over it. So sometimes the symptoms can last for years, and that again is something that women need to be aware of and need to be able to take control. And again, sport and exercise has a massive role to play here. And so I want to finish off really with some of the principles we feel are important to consider for women at this life stage, and again, to enable them to get active. And you heard some of these talked to in the film earlier. So the first one of these is really around endless possibilities. And, you know, one size doesn't fit all. We've talked about this, but this is about changing a mindset and providing not just opportunity, but inspiration, because there's so many things that women of this age are capable of doing that could interest them. And yet sometimes it feels very narrow and it feels very limited. So again, I think thinking about how we reframe and broaden what physical activity can be for these women can turn that feeling of loss round into an opportunity. I think the second one is about this judgment-free zone. Again, we know that women do feel scrutinised. And again, thinking about who's delivering the activities, how this is framed for women, so we can ease women back in and support them as they're getting fit again and as they're feeling that fitness grow. So it's not intimidating, it's not reinforcing all these fears about, you know, it's too late to do it. And we often talk with teenagers actually about creating moments of pride. And I think the same's true here, really. A welcoming environment where women can celebrate their achievements. They love it. And that's absolutely one of the key motivations for keeping in sport and exercise. And then the support network, again, supporting women to get this not just back on their radar, but to kickstart and embed it into their lives. And this is where I think, again, the wider sector, even healthcare, employers, can have a significant role to play. And again, it can have such an incredible impact. And then I think the final one is just about making it relevant, really. And again, it's about making sure it takes into the account the needs of different women. And tapping into those benefits that really excite them, so that we can, you know, that it is a time when women are thinking about their health and well-being. So again, it's a possibility to really talk to them about those menopause symptoms and support them to feel how they can take control. The expanding image of sporty we've talked about, but again, seeing those images, particularly as I say through This Girl Can, is incredibly powerful for these women and makes them believe that actually they can do this. And so we should continue to make sure that we reinforce that in everything that we do. And then the final two pieces really are just those broader areas that need to happen. One is that whole permission for time and how we support that. And I think the responsibility for that is not just within the sports sector, but outside of it as well, and to help women really feel that they can take this time out, that this is positive time out for themselves. And also opening up the menopause conversation, which thankfully is starting to happen, but is still not happening everywhere. So again, let's talk about it. Let's make sure that that isn't a taboo that's restricting women and making them feel like they're isolated and dealing with it on their own. So I'm just going to finish with a film. And again, this film is one that was put together. These are women who have engaged in sport and activity during midlife. And again, you'll hear from them about the steps that they've taken and the difference it's made to their lives. And I'd love to hear from you in the chat, actually, you know, anything that you're doing at the moment that really plays to this audience, any thoughts about how we can, you know, bring this awareness to these women, or anything that you'd like to do differently as a result. So I'm going to leave you with this film.
Everybody seems to be a victim to it, so you accept that it's...
just go, well, I've just got to do it. And I thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to change this narrative. I can't stop it, but I can maybe make myself fitter for it.
I don't want to be suffering from coronary heart disease, osteoporosis, sarcopenia. I want to stave that off as far as possible, put those brick walls up, and just live life to the full.
It's so important to be active and get out there and not just that, and meet other women that are the same as you and just have the same sort of problems and same fun, and you know, you're all like a support group together, really.
It's just that feeling of camaraderie, that we're doing it together, and nobody pushes you, nobody forces you to go in. It's all very much a case of we all do it at our own pace and we support each other.
I probably don't know what I would have done if I hadn't had football. Knowing that I can actually be active while having fun has been so important to me.
It's nice kind of, and it's just women on your space. It's just you women together, and you kind of rule the whole, you just feel like you rule the world actually when you're in class.
Women haven't often put themselves first, so I think now the opportunities are there, then they can actually have a bit of me time.
Let's get the conversation of menopause out there, because it's not something that should have a taboo and a stigma. It's not something to be ashamed of.